How do these coins become worth so much? And are they even coins? Just what the heck is a Bitcoin anyhow? We were throwing this around our own office trying to figure out what's going on here. So we decided we'd call in an expert who knew something or a lot more. It was easy to know about Bitcoins than we do. Morgen Peck is a freelance journalist for the IEEE Spectrum magazine.
Thanks for having me.
Do most people find this hard to wrap their minds around what a Bitcoin is?
Yes, I certainly did. It took me a long time.
Well, how do you? Well, explain it to me how you explained it to yourself then.
Okay. Well, I usually start at the beginning, which is to say that Bitcoin, like you said, is it a coin? I tend to think that's a misnomer because what Bitcoin actually is a public ledger. It's a vast database of transactions, and that's all it is. So to say that coins exist is not really.
So when we see these pictures in magazines of little Bitcoins, there really are no such things as the coin themselves.
Nope, that's just something that somebody devised to make it more palatable for us to understand.
Right. So how do you create then a Bitcoin?
It's a process called mining. And actually, before we sort of describe that, we might want to back up just a little bit.
Please.
So all Bitcoin is a big public ledger, a database of transactions, and that's the only thing that exists. And
so it's like a spreadsheet.
Sure.
It's like a spreadsheet of all transactions that people are doing.
Yep, and that's the only thing that exists. And the problem is when you have something like that, it'd be fine if I was sharing that database just with you right here at this table because I trust you.
Right.
But it's spread across a network of computers, a global network of computers of people who don't trust each other. So we don't trust those people to not go back into the ledger and change the values of the coins or where they are or where they've been spent. So you have to devise a mechanism where people can agree to what updates are being made to that ledger. And that's really the innovation of the protocol is Satoshi Nakamoto, the inventor, devised a way to create a consensus around this growing database.
So it's a database of numbers. And people who own some of those numbers that act as Bitcoins? Would that be correct?
It's a database that says you, Ira, own this many, and I, Morgan, own this many, and then when we want to spend them, we ask the network to update that ledger, and the network, the work that's being done, is to update that ledger, to do that, to scratch out our entries and change them. And you asked how Bitcoins are created. They're actually created within that process. So there's a level of participation in Bitcoin called mining, and those are the people who are rewriting this ledger. And it's computationally very difficult to do. And
it takes supercomputers to do this.
In the beginning, it wasn't because it's an arms race. These people are competing to do it, and in competing, they've gotten more and more specialized equipment to do so. But they're rewarded for this process by getting new Bitcoins, and that's how new Bitcoins enter the system. Each time the ledger is updated, which happens about every 10 minutes, the person, the computer that managed to do that is rewarded with a new chunk of coins. And that's so they are simultaneously securing the network and verifying transactions, and they're the mechanism by which new coins are created.
Is there anything backing up the coins, a pile of silver or gold or anything like that?
Nope, just your faith.
If I had a computer and I knew how to make a coin, mine a coin, could I do one myself?
First of all, you can't do one because right now it's every time there are new ones created, it's in a bulk of 25. But if you had a really, really fancy computer, then yes, you could.
And what would give it value? What would give my Bitcoins that I'm creating, I'm mining, any value?
Well, what gives anything value is the fact that somebody else is willing to pay you for them. That's how I define value. And Bitcoins are based on the market. They're based on whether people will pay you for them.
And so if I wanted to buy something from you with my Bitcoins, how would you decide what my Bitcoins are worth? to you?
Well, until this terrible debacle with Mt. Gox, they were the ones who were basically determining the market price because they're the ones that everybody looked at. And now people are looking at other exchanges and what people are willing to, how much people are willing to spend on a Bitcoin. So that determines the price.
So what happened in this debacle? What caused the debacle and the loss of all that fortune?
First of all, we don't know where the fortune went. It's mostly rumor and speculation at this point. But
do we know there was a fortune?
We do, because there are people who are very angry who have lost, who have clearly lost their money.
Right.
But we don't know where that went. We only know what Mt. Gox is claiming, which is that there was an attack against them, which basically amounts to a version of refund fraud.
Mm-hmm.
Someone was able to what they're claiming is someone is able to go to Mt. Gox and utilize a flaw in the Bitcoin software that allowed them to make it look as though Mt. Gox hadn't given their money back, because Mt. Gox not only functions as an exchange, but they have sort of bank properties too, because if I'm giving you my money, you broker my exchange, but then I can also leave my money in Mt. Gox. And a lot of people did that. They sort of used them as a wallet service. So they're claiming that that some of these people who then asked for their money back were able to make it look as though Mt. Gox hadn't paid them, when in fact they hadn't, when in fact they had. And they were able to just do this over and over again because Mt. Gox had implemented an automated system to pay back their customers.
Now, if I had a Bitcoin, or 25 of them,
Okay.
and I deposited them in your Mt. Gox or wherever they were,
Okay.
I would have a key to that safe deposit box that only I, even if you took my coins, only I would know how to unlock that coin, since it's a digital something, and let you use it. Or does nothing like that exist?
That's in fact the only thing that exists. That's the only thing that you own in Bitcoin.
So then how, if I have the key here, how did they able to steal my Bitcoin?
Well, because Mt. Gox doesn't exactly work that way, because they don't have accounts set up for each individual client. They're holding all of this money in one big wallet. So in some ways, it's antithetical to what Bitcoin is itself. The whole point of Bitcoin is that you're supposed to have sole control over your money. And probably because Mt. Gox was the only, thing there in the early days, they were the ones that people trusted, and they trusted them to function in this centralized way, which is...
So in effect, I gave them the key also.
That's right. Which is very strange, because it's completely antithetical to the way that Bitcoin works.
And it's antithetical to the internet,
Yep.
privacy and whatever, and not trusting people.
Yeah.
And you gave not only your coins, but the key to how to get into the box of your coins.
They did. They shouldn't have done that.
Stupid.
And it's surprising that they did, because that's really like the reason. That was the founding principle of Bitcoin, right?
Right.
Control over your own money.
Right.
And we don't know very much actually about why the creator made Bitcoin, but one of the things we're really sure about, is it was in response to the financial crisis and these problems that are surfacing now with Mt. Gox, which are sort of a replay of all of that. That's the one thing we know.
Are they bankrupt? They're out of business?
They just filed for bankruptcy today.
Yeah.
Whatever the Japanese form of bankruptcy is, they just did.
Does that mean everybody who has Bitcoins in there lost their Bitcoin?
It appears that way. A lot of people are really, really upset.
Now, I understand that you lived on Bitcoins for a week.
For a week.
How did that go? How did that work?
In Las Vegas, I did, yeah.
So when you say you lived on it for a week, you're not carrying around anything with you, or your slips of paper with a number? Tell us.
Nothing. I left my cash and my credit cards at home, and all I had was I downloaded a wallet service. You can use these browser-based wallets, and you can use some that are specifically for your phone. I used one called blockchaininfo.com, or that's a wallet service that you can use on your phone, and that's the only thing I used. And
so how would an exchange go? You have your something on your iPhone or whatever, and you have an app there that you're describing.
Right.
How do you use it?
In the most direct transaction, I would go to a restaurant, and there are a few in Las Vegas that have started taking Bitcoins. I would go to a restaurant, and when it was time to pay, I would put in. They have an address, which
Right.
is their, how they're identified on this public ledger, which is called the blockchain, by the way. And I would put their address in, and I would put a transaction request to the network. All of this is being done by the software that I'm
Right.
using on my phone, and the ledger would be rewritten so that my Bitcoins would move from my address to theirs.
But why?
they-
Why would they tell me what's going on
Yeah.
behind the scene? The scene that they're moving up and down radically like that.
They are. Yeah.
Why? I mean, why would your Bitcoins? I guess it's like stock in certain case.
Okay.
It changes value. The Bitcoin just like that, while it's in your account.
Well, like we said, it's driven by the market, and who knows what the whims of the market are. But I mean, there are one explanation for it is that there are only ever going to be a certain amount of coins. It was created to model gold.
Okay, that
model-
explains.
right.
Now you answered the question.
So-
If there's a supply and demand, if there's only a
Right.
finite number.
So every time Bitcoin hits the news, which it does periodically with either good or bad press,
Right.
new people get into it, and there's only a certain amount of Bitcoins being created every 10 minutes. And so that supply isn't changing, but the demand is going up periodically.
So everybody knows where if it's finite number, everybody who has Bitcoins knows where they are?
Well, where they
should
do.
be.
Right. Well, they know where, but the where as represented on the ledger is not names. It's pseudonyms. So
Like a Swiss bank account. So.
you would Swiss bank accounts still have names, I think, but on the Bitcoin ledger, Ira Flato would be a string, an alphanumeric string.
It's Bitcoin is also called programmable money. What does that mean? What would you do with it?
So there, Bitcoin would be somewhat interesting if it were just, a currency, just a new currency. People were upset with what we had and they wanted something completely new. But actually, what I think is the most interesting thing about it is that it adds to the functionality of money because not only when you do a transaction, you can actually embed a message into that. So money, the transfer of money itself becomes data, and you can there are a lot of ways you can use that data and put more data into it.
Does anybody charge you for making the transaction? Is there any fee or anything like that?
So these miners can require a fee. Right now, the fee is really low because they're incentivized by the fact that they're getting a payout of Bitcoins. But over time, that payout is going to decrease. Every 4 years, the amount of Bitcoins that are being created every 10 minutes halves. So it was 50 Bitcoins in the beginning. Now it's 25. And that's how the minting rate of the currency is controlled. So eventually there are going to be no new Bitcoins created, and at that point then the fees will probably go up. And these miners can require that in order for them to verify your transaction, you have to tack on a little fee there.
Why is this anything better than, let's say, like PayPal? What's the advantage to something like that? You're paying a few cents every time you use PayPal, and it's a transaction,
You're paying. Some people are paying more than a few cents, so that right there is a big deal. And certainly with things like Western Union, you're paying way more than
that I understand.
a few cents.
Yeah.
And I personally, that's one thing that really excites me about it. Is I used to work in kitchens, and I used to work with a lot of like Central American people who would be sending half of their paychecks home, and they'd be spending tons of money on remittances, giving huge portions of their check to Western Union, and that I think that's one problem it solves. Another thing is if you look at the Target hacks that recently happened. with credit cards, you have to put all of your private information out there.
Right.
If they were using Bitcoin, they wouldn't need any of that.
How soon am I going to get it at my ATM?
Sorry?
How soon will Bitcoins be available at my ATM machine?
Oh, well, there are Bitcoin ATMs already.
Yeah.
Your ATM machine, I'm not sure.